active murderer. He spent over 16 years in federal prison. He was repeatedly deported.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thought I'd kind of want to do something fun today. Something different. We got the, as you can see my title, we got the House floor debate on sanctuary cities. I'm going to also give some of my opinions and commentary on this matter as well as we go about it. Something different. Okay. Everything's working. You guys can feel free to chime in if you want. In fact, I'm even going to open up Uber conference calls. We can listen to it in the background and discuss some things. Plus, I want to introduce you to a few things. How to go to these websites. Watch these things for yourself, because I'll show you a few things to make this a little bit educational. Like I said, this is part of the process. Ah, there we go. Finally kicks in.
Free conference calls provided by the conference. Participants on the call, please hold while we wait for the others to join. Well, I've been sitting here.
Oh yeah, that's not going to happen.
I've been sitting in this waiting room.
Right now, let's look at mine. Oh, you froze up. Information in my chat window, guys. So, call from your cell phone, go from your computer. That's the thing. Oh, you don't want to look at my ugly mug yesterday. Alright, first off, let me show you where we want to go. First off, there's this log right here. Nope. There, no, we won't hear that loud noise. Okay, first link you want to go to is www.congress.gov. As you guys can see, we have live, in session, live video, live video. The Senate has no live video up right now, but this do. Just click on live video and it will take you to this page.
That includes substance to enter the country in full official restraint. This small change means it would be a felony for a person who's been previously denied admission or previously removed at a port of entry to request asylum, parole, admission, or another form of entry consistent with immigration law. This is a drastic departure from current law. Under current law, an individual can be prosecuted for illegal entry if they're trying to evade or intend to evade detection. If they're trying to sneak in, we charge them with a crime. An individual who comes to a port of entry and voluntarily presents herself to an immigration officer to ask permission to enter the country legally has not committed a crime. This bill would change that. The bill makes it a crime to come to a port of entry, not with the intent to enter the U.S. illegally, but to ask for a form of entry provided by the immigration officer. Generating 2 more minutes.
The gentleman in California is recognized for 2 minutes.
To ask for a form of entry provided by our immigration laws. In other words, this bill makes it a crime for someone to try to re-enter legally. If you're a victim of human trafficking and come to a port of entry to seek protection and ultimately a TV that the law allows, you would commit a crime under this bill. If you're a U.S. citizen, your U.S. citizen relative is critically injured. You show up at the court to ask for humanitarian parole so you could donate blood or donate an organ to your U.S. citizen relative. You committed a crime. In each of these cases, you could be prosecuted and put in jail for up to 2 years even if you ultimately win your immigration case. Now, I also want to make a point about some of the other types of people this bill would affect. U.S. sentencing commissions, at least half of all the individuals convicted of illegal entry under the current statute, which is, in fact, the most common federal prosecution in law today, they were coming to reunite with their family. Half of them had at least one child living in the U.S. 2/3 had other family members, a spouse or others they were trying to get back to. So in addition to the people who are trying to enter legally, this bill massively increases penalties on people who are trying to get back to their families, many of whom are U.S. citizens. To get these broken families is a direct result of our failed immigration policy. Hundreds of thousands of immigrant parents over the years leaving their U.S. citizen children as orphans in the United States. These parents, I understand it, back to their kids. Now, we may think that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would ask for one additional minute.
Young lady recognized for 1 minute.
But we don't think that's a crime to love your child and want to get back to that child. The desperation that these families feel is a direct result of our inability to create a top-to-bottom reform of our immigration laws that does this, that allows families to be united, that allows community to meet its needs, that allows the crops to be picked legally, problem by failing to enforce our laws. This bill doesn't solve the crime problem that we all care about. It creates a new problem. It is not the answer to the terrible offenses that are at the name of it. In fact, it seems to me to be merely an excuse to expand deportation for the many, many people whose only offense is wanting to be near their families. So I urge my colleagues who oppose this bill. I think the gentlelady from New York really has that.
Gentlelady yields back her time. Gentlelady from New York reserves her time, and the gentleman from Texas. Mr. Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California, Majority Leader, Mr. McCarthy. The gentleman from California, the Majority Leader, is recognized. Gentleman, for yielding and for his work he does as the chair of Rules Committee. Very important work for the nation and the cabinet. Now, Mr. Speaker, there are some debates on this floor that are very complicated. They hinge on technicality, complex judgment calls. You need to properly weigh all the data, all the studies. But I will tell you, Mr. Speaker, that today's debate is not complicated. This is not about a nuance. The subject is not complex. This is about answering a simple question of our government to protect the American people first? Or is the purpose of our government to protect felons who have entered our country illegally, caused, and threatened our people? I wish this was an exaggeration. But American citizens have died because some local governments have refused to uphold our laws. These so-called sanctuary cities offer safety for illegal felons. But they do so by putting our family, our neighbors, and our fellow Americans in danger. The American people now look to their government. You know what? They're uncertain. They elected people to represent them. But would those representatives rather protect felons here illegally or their fellow citizens? As far as this House is concerned, let us end the uncertainty today. Our government should and always will put the safety of American people first. Cities offering sanctuary for criminals will no longer be ignored. And criminals who threaten our citizens and re-enter our country with no respect for our laws will be punished. Kate Stein, an American citizen, a daughter, and a promising young woman would be alive today if local governments did not act as a safe haven for lawbreakers. Juan Lopez Sanchez shot Kate after being deported 5 times. He had 7 felony convictions before he murdered her. After this crime, we asked the same questions the rest of America did. How could this man be let free? Why was he in America in the first place? And how can cities across our nation continue to shield such people from the law? In America, the federal government has little right to tell states and localities how to conduct affairs properly left to them. The federal government has every right to demand that these governments follow our just laws written in accordance with our Constitution. And if they do not, if those cities protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, they should not expect their fellow citizens to help them through the federal government. For those cities with laws designed to harbor immigrants who have entered the country illegally, our legislation will prohibit those laws, cut off federal grant money, and allow the families who suffer as a result of their foolishness the right to have their day in court. And to the criminals, if you break our laws and ever return, justice will come for you, and the penalty will be severe. Mr. Speaker, being an American means something. We should never forget that. If America is your home, you are a citizen. If you are part of this national community, rest assured the government is here for you. The American people come first. I yield back.
The gentleman from California yields back his time. The gentleman from Texas reserves his time. The young lady from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to inquire if my colleague has more speakers.
Thank you very much. The majority side does have several speakers left.
I reserve.
New York reserves her time. Gentleman from Texas. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, this time I'd like to give 5 minutes to the distinguished young gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Duncan. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Duncan, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank Chairman Sessions for his continued leadership here in the House of Representatives, and especially on this issue in the Rules Committee. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, in support of this rule and the underlying bill, which we're calling Kate's Law. We're calling this crackdown on illegal immigration and sanctuary city policies Kate's Law after Kate Stanley. For those of you who don't know the story of Catherine Kate Stanley, she was a beautiful 32-year-old woman from Northern California who was murdered on the streets of San Francisco while walking on a pier with her father 2 years ago this weekend. Murdered. The alleged murder, an illegal immigrant named Juan Francisco, had 7 felony convictions and had been deported from the United States 5 times. Deported 5 times. Let that sink in. It's truly unbelievable, Mr. Speaker. And yet, he was back in our country. After maneuvering through the previous administration's weak southern border and negligent immigration enforcement. And then he lived in San Francisco due to that city's blatant disregard for the law. A sanctuary city. San Francisco was no sanctuary for Kate. No sanctuary for that beautiful 32-year-old woman. If this story isn't a clear sign that our system is broken, I don't know what is. We need case law to increase criminal penalties for illegal felons like Juan Francisco, crimes, deported, and then decided once again to illegally re-enter the United States of America, a sovereign nation. Case law is straightforward, common sense, and it is the right beginning to make our homeland safer and get smart about immigration policy. It's time for us to make America safe again by addressing the lack of enforcement of federal law. Case law is the right answer. I want to thank Chairman Goodlett for introducing case law so we can crack down on this kind of illegal behavior that so often means life or death for American citizens. It's time to enforce the law. The gentlelady a few minutes ago was talking about the law. Well, there are laws on the books that say it's illegal to enter this country. There are laws on the books that prohibit these type sanctuary cities or sanctuary campuses as we're now seeing. And I hope Congress will cut off the funding to these cities. It's time to get their attention to enforce federal law. So I'm pleased the White House has vocalized their support for the underlying bill should it reach President Trump's desk. Now I call upon my colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats, to support the rule and the underlying bill. It's time again to make America safe again and honor young women like Kate. This should be a bipartisan issue. Should be. Respect for the rule of law and protect the American citizen is really that simple. Now you back. Gentleman, yield back. Gentleman, Speaker, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I believe the gentlewoman has instructed from her colloquy with me that she does not have additional speakers and would choose for me to move forward. Is that correct?
I do not, but I will refer to our PQ, right now, if I may, and yield to Mr. Pasquarello, please.
That would be fine. Gentlemen, we reserve our time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, President Trump campaigned on the promise of bringing jobs back home and removing barriers to job creation, but despite these promises, President Trump's budget does the complete opposite. It cuts job training programs by 39%, and its draconian spending cuts would lead to massive job losses. Well, my colleagues will be happy to hear I have an amendment that will ensure the President keeps his promise of bringing jobs back home. Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to bring up Representative Pasquarello's Bring Jobs Home Act, H.R. 685. This bill will close a tax loophole that rewards companies for moving jobs.
Here's the issue I've got with what they're doing right now. This is supposed to be a debate and discussion on the sanctuary cities and Kate's Law. That's what they're calling it. But this is what they've been doing throughout the day. This is one of the issues I have. They're not debating. They'll bring up other issues too that's not related. This is the stuff that we need to take a look at and demand that it stops. When you're debating an issue, it should be just that issue. That way they're not spending, what, this is going on 3 hours of our taxpayers' dollars. It's not addressing the real issues. It is diverting it to other ways. As I posted in chat, another issue is, here's what they're not telling you. Sanctuary cities. There's a law in place. And this is for every person that's convicted of a crime. If they have an outstanding warrant or they are an illegal and due for deportation, they are held, I think, 24 hours to 48 hours, depending on the state. Either the local police department or the immigration officer, ICE, or the federal marshals have to come pick up that detainee within 24 to 48 hours. What happens in these sanctuary cities, they release them. That's how they keep getting out of the system. That's how they just go right back to the streets, even though they're supposed to be deported. So they're protecting these convicted felons, illegal immigrants, when they get out, when they get released, by releasing them and not holding them or obstructing these officers from coming to be able to pick them up, tying them up in legal loopholes that's not supposed to be there, or just denying them entry into the prison. I think it's important that you hear this, because you can see they're wasting your taxpayer dollars now. They're diverting the topic to something else, and it's basically stalling the vote. They should be on topic. Let me say something about, anybody can live stream this because this is public information, just like we're allowed to, open sessions, we're allowed to watch the proceedings. Beautiful thing about this website is they show the live sessions. You can go back to keep them recorded. They'll upload the recordings of them. You can watch these things. It allows us to take place. As you can see, the lady from New York, Democrat from New York, doesn't have any more real witnesses for the thing, but she's keeping her time locked in so she can, because they're entitled so much time that they can give to other people to block things, to change their subject. The subject of the day is supposed to be Kate's Law. Immigration. Okay, I'm going to switch over here in a second just to make sure there's nobody comments. And kind of share the links that I haven't shared yet.
Administration and its Congress is empty words, inherent bigotry. They want to change now.
Like I said, I'll rephrase how to get here. It's at congress.gov. You have the House and Senate. Just click on the live video feed, and it'll take you to, it'll open up this page here. We can watch live. He's still talking about something off subject.
To defeat the previous question and bring up the format. This bill eliminates the tax deduction, use a tax credit of up to 20%.
But this is how they do filibusters or distract people from watching. We're here, we want to hear the issues, not other issues. The issue at the table is supposed to be Kate's Law. This is what I want to point out to you that goes on, that we are putting them in here, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not debating the issue.
Back to our shores. In fact, we used it in the last campaign as a reason why we have a problem in employment. If the immigrants take these jobs, that has been an empty fact. No details, no facts, no science. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't get much simpler than this. This is not a new idea. President Obama and Congress raised the bill for years. The House blocked it in the majority on the other side. Senator Stabenow of Michigan leads this bill in the Senate, where it cleared a procedural vote 93-7. I challenge you today to stop the small talk, put your money where your mouth is, take up and pass this bill to stand for American manufacturing and the workers here at home who need help. The previous question, so we can bring up the Bring Jobs Home Act and start bringing jobs back to the United States. And I'll take a back seat to no one when it comes to upholding the law. I yield back.
Gentlemen, yield back. The chair would remind members that remarks in debate may not engage in personality towards the President of the United States, including by repeating remarks made elsewhere that would be improper if spoken in the member's own words. Gentlewoman from New York, reserve the balance of her time. Gentleman from Texas.
Just the other thing they do.
Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker,
Turn this down a bit.
I'd like to yield 6 minutes to the gentleman from...
This is something else they do. They'll introduce new bills on the debate that they're supposed to be talking about. when it should be only this bill. Bills that are irrelevant to this subject. I want this to be a little bit educational for you guys when it goes on. Let's get back to what they're talking about.
The tragic death of 32-year-old Kate Stanley, who was shot and killed by an illegal immigrant who had 7 prior felony convictions and who had also been deported 5 times. Kate's death is a clear reminder that we must do more to stop the abuse of our immigration laws by criminals who repeatedly flaunt the rule of law by illegally re-entering the United States. This in place new guidelines for stiffer penalties for criminal aliens who continue to re-enter the United States illegally. Kate's law is desperately needed to protect the residents of the state of Texas. Nicodemo Correa Gonzalez, who had been deported 5 times to Mexico for crimes including 3 DWIs, re-entered the United States illegally and was charged with committing multiple sexual assaults and kidnapped a woman solely for the purpose of setting her on fire. Current policy enables criminals to roam American streets no matter where they come from, with little fear of arrest and deportation. Kate's law imposes stronger consequences and is an important step in restoring law and order and will protect American lives. Sadly, there are local and state officials in our great nation that put the interests of criminal aliens before the safety of American citizens. These officials should take the time to meet with the families of the many victims of these criminal aliens like I have. They will see the resulting tragedy of sanctuary city policies. To rein in such states and localities, we need to pass the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act, which will impose consequences on state and local jurisdictions that ignore federal immigration law by refusing to work with federal immigration officials to remove criminal aliens from the United States. In the first month of the Trump administration, Immigration and Customs Enforcement issued over 3,000 detainers. These are orders for local authorities to keep criminal aliens in custody for 48 hours. Agents to come and get them for deportation. Remarkably, 206 of these detainers were declined by sanctuary city jurisdictions. In other words, local authorities deliberately ignored ICE's detainer requests and released these dangerous individuals. These weren't just petty criminals, folks. Their crimes included homicide, rape, assault, domestic violence, indecent exposure to a minor, sex offenses against minors, aggravated assault with a weapon, vehicle theft, driving under the influence, hit and run, and sexual assault. Passing the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act is common sense, as it cuts off certain federal Department of Justice grants to these sanctuary cities. Our bill redirects these funds to states and localities that are cooperating with federal immigration authorities and making America safer. The message of this legislation is clear. The American taxpayers are tired of footing the bill for states and localities that threaten their safety. Criminal aliens with final deportation orders make up more than 50% of foreign-born inmates sitting in our prisons right now. Our streets will be made safer by deporting these criminal aliens rather than letting them loose onto American streets. Local law enforcement officials should work with federal law enforcement agencies to keep criminals out of our country and off of these streets. This is why we must pass Kate's Law and the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act to prevent other deaths like Kate Stanley's. I am proud to support these 2 common-sense law and order bills and strongly urge my House colleagues to vote in favor of them today.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas. We reserve our time. Thanks to the Speaker. The balance of this time, gentlewoman from New York.
May I inquire if you have further speakers, Mr. Sanchez?
Yes, ma'am. At this time, I would tell you that we have 1 additional speaker.
All right.
At least 1 additional. Excuse me. We have 2 additional speakers, and then I would reserve closed.
We reserve.
Thank you very much. Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Texas. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I would like to have to be recognized as one of the leading voices in Congress, not only on this issue, but also issues of great importance in its Americanism. It's a great country. We live in the greatest country in the world. And there isn't one time that I'm not around this gentleman that he does not speak about American exceptionalism, the rule of law, and the important attributes of our country. At this time, I'd like to yield the gentleman 5 minutes. The gentleman from Iowa is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Texas, and also like to reciprocate and compliment the gentleman from Texas who stands here and leads in this Congress every day. In the Rules Committee, a lot of times those are late night meetings, and maybe the rest of us have put our feet up. Not so much me, but some of the rest of us, Mr. Speaker. And Pete Sessions is up there working away, keeping organization in this House and helping bring these things to the floor. And we would not be here on the floor today if we didn't have a Rules Committee that worked with and cooperated. I also want to thank Bob Goodlatte for joining with me on this and putting his name on top of this bill as the chairman of the Rules Committee, or we would be still stuck back in hearings and markups. This is a great week to be debating these immigration bills that are here. And a big reason have joined is the radio talk show hosts that believe in secure borders and the rule of law and enforcing immigration law and building a wall come together at the Phoenix Hotel in this city, and we talk about those rule of law and enforcing immigration law. That's gone on now for a long time. I've joined in most of those, but also this is the week that the grieving families who have lost a loved one at the hands of a criminal alien in this country, the city had joined in the radio discussion that's taken place at the Phoenix Hotel, but they also were invited out to the White House to meet with the president yesterday, where there were a number of these families that were there to be represented and respected. 2/3 to 3/4 of them are people that I've worked with from nearly the beginning of the tragedy that struck their family. And so it's I'm greatly respectful of the individuals who have had the courage to step forward that President Trump has identified. And I recall those times when he asked some of these families, Jamil Shaw, for example, and Marianne Mendoza, and Sabine Durden, whose son Dominic was killed by an illegal alien. Families are families that have paid a huge price, but they were strong enough and courageous enough to step up on the stage with presidential candidate Donald Trump and to recount their stories to the media, some of them to speak before the National Convention stories. And just this morning, reiterate the story of the murder of his son that took place within the sound of the gunshots of the living room that Jamil Shaw was sitting in. And I've heard that now for 9 years. It's not gone out of his voice, Mr. Speaker. And we have some obligations here. And I heard it in the previous speaker. Keep our people safe. Of those who die at the hands of criminal aliens, the illegal aliens, anyone who is unlawfully president of America and perpetrates violence against an American citizen, kills an American citizen or someone who's lawfully president of America, every one of those are preventable crimes, 100% preventable crimes. And I would just direct the attention here, Mr. Speaker, of a tweet that I had them pull down for me today. But I saw the news story about Kate Stein. And when I saw that story, it's printed out here in front of me, and it says, after a woman shot, killed in San Francisco. San Francisco woman who was killed in a seemingly random act of violence is mourning her loss as police continue to search for lost in space, the article that I read. Published on the 2nd of July, she was killed on the 1st of 2015. My tweet came up on the 3rd, the very next day. I didn't stop to think about it. I didn't wait to see if it became a national story that Bill O'Reilly would bring up. By the way, thanks to Bill O'Reilly here today.
But here's the message I sent out with this picture of Kate Steinle. It says 100% preventable crime. Justice, enforce the law. This will make you cry too every day. That's within only 142 characters, Mr. Speaker. Every day in this country, at the hands of criminal aliens, people who are lawfully here are suffering. Cry. And there isn't a way that we quantify the lawsuit to a crime. The crime victim is often out of the equation when it comes to enforcing the law. And on the case where I was the subject of a severe property rights crime, I listened to them announce the case of the state versus, I remember his name, Jason Martin Powell. I'm not in this. My name isn't part of this proceeding because we don't honor the victims enough. Well, we're honoring them here today, and a couple of pieces of legislation that are coming down, and we're honoring the life of Kate Steinle. We're honoring the work of Jim Steinle, the rest of her family, and all of both adults. There's a lot more than fired. Gentleman, time is expired. Gentleman from Texas. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Continue to reserve.
Gentlewoman continues to reserve, and we will go ahead and look forward. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I'd like to yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, a gentleman who my party pays for on a daily basis, the gentleman, Mr. Poe. The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 4 minutes. I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot. We hear about it every day. This is a health care bill. It is for the health of Americans. Health of
so that they have the right to good health, health that is sometimes prevented by those people that commit crimes in the U.S., go to prison, get deported, go back, come back to the U.S., and commit another crime. It's a health care bill. And I would hope that our friends on the other side would vote for at least one health care bill this year, and this is that bill. Yeah. That a person can commit a crime in this country, come back, commit more crimes back and forth, as we have heard, and continue to do it with lawlessness and arrogance is because the law is and our cities talk about the communities that live there. I live in Houston, Texas. Help protect the immigrant population. Because you got MS-13 gangs, come to the U.S. They set up shop in our immigrant community. They terrorize those communities. And they do it with lawlessness because they believe if they ever get caught, they'll eventually be able to come back into the United States, continue their wicked ways. This bill helps prevent that. The cities do not want to protect the immigrant community. And law enforcement does not want to help enforce the law. And those communities should get federal funds from law enforcement. That's what these two bills do. So I would hope members of Congress would understand the importance that this bill deals with criminal aliens that run through the United States committing crimes, get deported, and continue to come back. And this legislation helps us all together to protect the American health of everybody. Those people live in big cities, those people who live in small cities, it protects the people who live in the United States. It makes them healthy because we can make sure that those people who want us to be unhealthy by their criminal violent acts are not in the United States. And with that, I get back to the gentleman. And that's just the way it is. Gentleman yields back. We reserve our time. Gentleman from Texas reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from New York is recognized. I agree with that. I have one thing for him. Gentleman from New York.
Why keep gonna smash tanks?
Very much, and I appreciate the dialogue. But also for your day-to-day service to those issues, or they face on recognition. The speaker, what we're doing here today has a lot to do with two bills that were taken out of a long-term immigration bill. Yesterday, we heard a debate on balancing acts. Balancing acts that addressing two very specific problems that are very, very related. These are all important bills. Make no mistake about it. These are not political. These are law enforcement bills. These are law enforcement bills. They're designed to actually be effective for the qualified under the whole law.
Sorry about that, guys. I had to step away for a bit to help with some groceries away for the 4th of July weekend. As you guys were seeing earlier, I was flipping through some of the things, showing you how to use these websites. You can look up all the bills that they're working on, what's going on for the day when they're in session. It's actually our public duty to be monitoring what they're doing, making sure that they're representing we the people, for the people. You can see there's a lot of misuse inside our government that goes on. When they're supposed to be debating law and the immigration bill, they want to switch subjects, as you guys seen with a couple of them, and try to divert the subjects to other things that's not part of what they're supposed to be debating. The people should be standing up, calling those congressmen and demanding that when they're in session, when they're debating a bill, it's that bill. No other bills should be introduced during this debate or this session. The topics. Otherwise, they're just wasting our taxpayers' dollars and not doing what we asked them to do. And that's all I was talking about, how the sanctuary cities work. Like I said, when they do arrest and send, talking about deported 5 times, convicted 7 times of crimes, being in a sanctuary city, they're obstructing justice by allowing ICE agents to come in, because like I said, they have to detain them 24 to 48 hours. That's for non-citizen alike. That's the way the law is. The prison has to detain them. It works like this. They'll call the organization, call the whoever's got the hold on them, and notify them the day before that this inmate's due to be released. And upon his release, the clock starts. What a lot of these sanctuary cities do, they just release them. Deny entry into the prison for the ICE agents or other agencies. Just release the person into the streets, therefore obstructing the federal laws, obstructing these laws. And a couple of the California senators, a couple of New York senators, how they just talked about this and that, are saying, you know, it's a weird process what they do. But because, one, let's talk about California. You are in a U.S. state, you're supposed to be Americans, but yet, and the homeless problem in California, and the money that is allotted to that is less than what they spend on protecting illegal immigrants that they're getting for sanctuary. Where's the sanctuary for our U.S. homeless people, our U.S. vets that are homeless in California? Basically what California, Chicago, New York do, they say screw you to the American people. We don't recognize your rights. We don't recognize you as citizens. And you know, the beauty of this, anybody can just come on here and stream this because it's public record. It's meant for you to come. Just like For the, it used to be you had to go there and sit in the top rows. I mean, I remember going when I was in school, making a trip to D.C. We was able to sit in and watch the Senate and the House. Hate stuff. But you know, then I was young. I didn't really understand. And I had a good history lesson because before you could even proceed to junior high, you had to know how American history, how the executive branch worked, the judiciary branch worked. You had to know every state capitals, how their executive. They don't teach that anymore. They don't teach history. They omit the fact that the Boston Tea Party happened. As you can see on the voting, it's staying party lines for the most part. I'm sure there's several Democrats that are actually for this and voting for it. But as you can see, it's just certain groups in the Democratic Party that's few Republicans. I heard few Republicans oppose this. But we keep electing into office. We need to stop. We want change. We want our Constitution honored. We want our rights protected, our liberties protected. We don't want to see them debate for 4 hours and talk about other subjects that has nothing to do with what they're supposed to be debating. Just on the issue. In fact, you shouldn't. It should be straightforward. I don't think they should have to spend 4 hours debating an issue like this. This is common sense. The Supreme Court already said there's travel bans. When it comes to national security, when it comes to our funding, our taxpayers' dollars, we're not supporting illegal people. You know, I kind of agreed somewhat with that Democrat said, even though it was off subject, he talked about he's all for the American people, giving the American people the jobs. We need to stop these factories, these corporations from hiring illegals. Look, when I was in North Carolina, all you had to do, if you were a contractor, go to Lowe's. Out front of Lowe's every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, you had 100 illegals taking jobs that normally people like me could get right into, but they don't want to pay me the wages for my work. They rather pay nothing because they don't have to insure them. They don't have to, it's all under the table. And I thought it was funny. I got to revisit this year after Trump got elected. I went to Lowe's at the normal time while I was down there, and lo and behold, what did I see? 20 people. So is there an issue with immigration? Yes, a big one. One lady was talking about, because she was basically saying, about that guy they keep referring to that was arrested 7 times, deported 5, saying that the case, that never happened, or he was never convicted of a crime while he was. The point is, once he came into the state, once he came into any of these states, entered U.S. soil illegally, he committed a crime. Talking about the organ donors, stuff. You can get an emergency visa for stuff like that. They can get that. They're spinning you BS rhetoric. They're telling you half-truths to support a system of sanctuaries where they're taking millions and millions of dollars and spending it on what? That's what we should be asking. What are you spending that federal funding on? Because you're not spending on the homeless problem, your infrastructure, you're not improving your cities. In fact, your crime rates are skyrocketing. Well, oh yeah, you're using that to blame it on gun control. Try to strip our Second Amendment rights. So we've had 1 Republican vote nay. 80 Democrats vote nay, none yay. We still have 131 that haven't voted. Common sense bill that protects us. And there's many parts in this bill, like I showed you how to access the bills. so you can read them for yourselves. You can pull up, you can see who voted. When this is all done, you can see who voted for and against. You can look it up by state. You have a beautiful tool at your disposal. And it's actually designed for you to use. Or any legal person will tell you there's no ignorance to the law. It's your due diligence to know it, just like it's our due diligence, as we were taught in high, that it is our duty to research, watch what our politicians are doing. They don't teach that anymore. Like I said, I thought this would be nice and educational to do. That's why I did it. I've left you the links to where you can access this stuff. Senate, recent yesterday in Congress, bill text, calendars and schedules, so you can see what's coming up. I'm going to check in. Just like you want to check on executive orders, I'll show you that real quick. It is our job to stay on top of things. It's our job when we don't like what we're seeing to inform others. Show them. Take them to these sites. Print it out. If they don't want to believe the printed copy, take them to the site so they can read it for themselves. This is at, oh, wrong one. Let's go review Obama's executive orders right here. They don't, these are the archives. I gotta actually go back to the real site. They keep them archived. Any law you want to look up, anything, legislation, executive orders that were ever passed, you can find them. I had forgotten that they keep these up, see? Oh, come on. Apparently. Council executive offices, vice president, cabinet, I gotta find them. Legislation. Top issues that they're actually dealing with. Where is it? I'll just scroll down here, probably easier to find. Press briefings, all the stuff at your guys' disposal. I'm guessing it's under this. Presidential actions. Ha, it's under presidential actions, guys. Executive orders. These sometimes take 24 hours to a couple days to update on here, but you can go back and look. June 21st. That's why. I think there's a couple that haven't been updated yet. Presidential Executive Order amending Executive Order 13597. You just click on it and you can read it. Read the laws. Then I've showed you here on the other page how you can look up legislation. These are important matters for us to understand. Understand that these tools are at your disposal. That way you're not believing everything you hear on CNN, mainstream news. You can read it for yourself because they omit stuff out and focus on a few words here. Like the biggest issue back in the NDAA bill and Patriot Act, how they worded things. Then they told you opposite. Or it says refer to section something. That's the other thing, man. We need to demand that they keep these bills under 100 pages. You don't need anything else. And that only what's in that bill should be in that bill. Nothing, no other bills introduced in it. That bill only. This is how we get control of our government. This is how we make our government represent we the people, for the people. We start demanding that we want all lobbyists banned. We want the corporate sector to be held accountable to our Constitution and to our Bill of Rights. 163 Democrats and 1 Republican thus far. We only have 50 votes remaining. This is ridiculous. It's showing you that the Democratic Party is not about our Constitution, not about we the people, for the people. Of course, it's being proven with all these special elections we've had. Not a single Democrat that I know of has been reelected. This has been real close. This is why we need to eliminate party lines. Quit voting by party. Vote by the person. Do they represent the Constitution? Do they represent our Bill of Rights? Do they represent our freedoms and liberties? And when I say the Constitution, I mean as it is written in black and white. There is no other interpretation of it other than its black and white form. Any other interpretation that needs to be interpreted is dealt with our Supreme Court, not our federal 9th District Circuit Court, who has had, you take the pick, numbers start at 75 and I've heard all the way up to 86% overturned by the Supreme Court. They're not representing you, the people. In fact, they're screwing you, the people. Yeah, I know. Some people say I'd make a great politician. No, I wouldn't. I can't stand politics, actually, because of this. Because what I watch, I get to watch from time to time. I'll tune it in, see what's going on, especially on issues that matter, especially issues that are constitutional, issue that's supposed to be our national security. And this isn't even a national security matter. It's a, well, it's a U.S. citizen matter. Let's put it that way. These illegals, they either get in taking jobs from you, they're committing these crimes, and they keep coming back. Do I think the wall will make a difference? Some, but they're going to find ways around it. There's no real permanent fix to that situation. One of the fixes, though, is stopping these sanctuary cities. Because in a sense, they are committing a crime against the people that live in that state by allowing it to take place. So we had 13 no votes. All right, this will roll in 12. We had 1 Democrat vote for this. I applaud him. 1 person stepped out from the party lines for you, the people. But on the same token, we had 1 vote against you. You could probably pretty much well guess what state he was from. We'll find out, though, because like I said, all these votes will be accountable for. Now we'll just go to... Here's another bill that's important, guys, that I'm hovering around. The S.1241 Combating Money Laundering, Terrorist Financing, and Counterfeiting Act. There's only so far, last I heard, I don't know right now, it's been a couple days, Gabbard, I can't pronounce her first name, sorry about that, but she introduced this bill, and so far there's only 13 senators backing her. This is a very important bill. This will stop things that are happening in San Diego, like CARE, who has been, by our Justice Department and our current government, deemed a sponsor of terrorist organizations. This would stop this. This would stop us arming.
The age was 235. The days are 190. The previous question is ordered. The question is now on the adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I request a yes vote, I do a recorded vote. It's been a long day, Mr. Speaker.
A recorded vote is requested. Those in favor, a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
They've got to vote on agreeing. Once more waste of time. Maybe change the vote, change people's mind. Back in the day, when our forefathers ran this country, it was one vote. Yeah, they would have some very heated debates. We've had to change some laws on the process because there was some dueling going on as well. That's how heated things got. But they only voted once on a bill. Here's other measures. They sat here and argued it out until they came to a resolve. It wasn't, oh, we need to re-vote on it. Here's the worst part of this. Okay, they vote, they pass it, and then it goes up to the Senate. So we get to repeat this process with the Senate. Actually, this might not go to the Senate. Depends how this is written. So just be a vote that actually only is voted in the House and doesn't go up. Certain bills can stay in certain sectors. On this one, but I'm pretty sure this is probably one of those issues where it has to be voted by both. And on some of these issues, watching these could be boring because you'll never hear a speaker. You can go 15, 20 minutes where somebody rolls in and actually talks. A lot of people don't tune in. And like I said, some of it they do it on purpose. Let's see if they've got this thing updated yet. you know, must have clicked on the wrong one. The House floor. That was actually an important bill, guys, that I had just clicked on. That's dealing with silencers, which they had removed off the floor. It was supposed to be a couple weeks ago when that shooting happened in that Republican-Democrat softball game. They yanked that bill. It was supposed to be on the floor that day. It's a good bill to look into. Uh-oh, this is not a promising sign. Okay, it's still showing it hasn't passed the House. Which, as you can see, they're doing another vote anyway. Because even the travel ban stuff is also part of this immigration bill. Summaries in progress. Okay, so it does have to go to the Senate. The tracker's nice because you can track what's going on. So I can come up here and subscribe to this feed.
On this vote, the yeas are 236, the nays are 191.
Miss Michelle Lujan Grisham. Miss Michelle Lujan Grisham voted no.
On this vote, the yeas are 236, the nays are 191. The resolution is adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Plus, this is kind of a history lesson on how things were. It's educational. It also shows you some of the misuse of politics inside our government. And some people might argue that they don't think it is. That's your opinion. You have the right to that. If we make it so when they're debating a bill, it's strictly on that bill, nothing is allowed to be introduced outside of it, we get laws passed quicker, faster.
That House will be in order. Please take your conversations off the floor. The House will be in order.
For what purpose is the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlett, seek recognition? Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 414, I call up H.R. 3003, Sanctuary for Criminals Act. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
003, a bill to amending Immigration and Nationality Act to modify provisions relating to assistance by states and political subdivision of states in the enforcement of federal immigration law and for other purposes.
Resolution 414, the bill is considered read. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers, each will control 30 minutes. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 3003. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order. The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. Gentlemen's recognized. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as that may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act. Straightforward bill combats dangerous sanctuary policies that permit criminals to go free. Familiar with how sanctuary policies have devastated families across the United States. Taking action to prevent these senseless tragedies and save American lives. Lack of immigration enforcement and spread of sanctuary policies have cost too many lives. The Obama administration encouraged to jurisdictions nationwide that implemented sanctuary policies. It's designed to prevent U.S. immigration and customs enforcement able to effectively enforce federal law. Foolhardy jurisdictions continue to pass legislation and implement policies aimed at stymieing and maligning the immigration and customs. Earlier this year, a Baltimore City Council member introduced a resolution calling on ICE to arrest only those posing a, quote, serious risk, end quote. This initiative, the council member likened ICE officers to Nazis several times. Reprehensible, creating a moral equivalence between genocide and a nation exercising a fundamental right and obligation of sovereignty. In a deeply disruptive move on the other coast, San Francisco announced that it would no longer participate in the Joint Terrorism Task Force because of concerns that the task force's duties may coincide with immigration enforcement. Sanctuary policies often focus on flouting ICE detainers. Notice is issued by ICE to allow it to take custody of aliens in law enforcement custody in removal proceedings. Policies have led to a sharp drop in ICE's intake of aliens from criminal detention facilities, which in the 1990s, federal law has barred jurisdictions from restricting communication with federal immigration officials regarding has never been enforced. H.R. 3003 amends current law and
expands this prohibition against impeding federal law enforcement. Instead of merely focusing on communication, the bill ensures that no jurisdiction may restrict assistance or compliance with immigration enforcement. To be clear, this bill imposes no affirmative duty to act on the part of any jurisdiction. Should a jurisdiction not comply with this provision, the jurisdiction will not be eligible for certain grant programs administered by the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security. Many of these grant programs is already predicated on compliance with this provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act. Also in line with a recent memo by Attorney General Sessions outlining compliance with this provision, single factor that the Justice Department will use in identifying sanctuary jurisdictions. Regarding detainer policy, long heard that jurisdictions will not comply with ICE requests to hold individuals due to a lack of probable cause in the detainer. I am pleased that H.R. 3003 provides the probable cause standards to ensure that ICE only places detainers on aliens for whom they have probable cause. In addition, the bill mandates that ICE must take custody of the subject of a detainer within 48 hours, including weekends and holidays. Comply in good faith with detainer requests will be immune from liability associated with that detainer, and if such an action does arise, the U.S. government will substitute itself in as the defendant. This ensures that jurisdictions do not go bankrupt defending against never-ending litigation. Jurisdictions that refuse to honor a detainer resulting in an alien committing a crime, the victim or victim's family with the opportunity to bring a lawsuit against that jurisdiction. Of H.R. 3003 is named for Sarah Root and Grant Ronnebeck, two young people whose lives were suddenly taken, who remain at large today. This section was originally introduced as separate bills by Judiciary Committee members and Andy Biggs, who worked tirelessly to bring these tragic cases to the attention of the committee and the Congress. This section provides that aliens who are arrested or charged with serious crimes or serious bodily injury of another must be held without bond during the pendency of their removal proceedings. In addition, aliens convicted of even one drunk driving offense will also be ineligible for bond during their removal proceedings. Have prevented the August 2010 death of Sister Denise Mosier, a Catholic nun in Virginia, drunk driving illegal alien who was released from ICE custody on bond. Of individuals present a clear and to society and should not be permitted to roam our communities during the pendency of their removal hearings. Provisions of H.R. 3003 will provide better immigration and the peace of mind that no criminal will be provided sanctuary from our immigration laws. Reserve the balance of my time. The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, would yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Members of the House of Representatives, I want to be clear at the outset of this debate that this legislation does nothing to make our communities safer. And it does nothing to improve our immigration system. Instead, H.R. 3003 will trample the rights of states and localities to determine what is in the best interests of their public safety and will conscript law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law. The ultimate experts on community safety are communities themselves. And then have determined that as community trust increases, crime decreases. Because immigrants will come out of the shadows and report crimes to the local law enforcement when they are not threatened with deportation. A recent study found that community trust jurisdictions are actually safer than their counterparts. Against this considered judgment, H.R. 3003 forces localities to abandon community trust principles and mandates action officers into federal immigration enforcement. Localities, of course, would rightfully resist this conscription. H.R. 3003 would rob them of vital law enforcement funding that they depend on to prevent crime, criminals, and boost community policing ranks. Localities, therefore, would face a losing choice. They can abandon community trust and leave their communities in danger. They can leave community trust policies in place, but foreign law enforcement funding, leaving their communities in danger. Lose-lose. Now, it's important that we consider that this is more than just bad policy. It is also likely unconstitutional reasons. First, H.R. 3003 likely violates the 10th Amendment by commandeering states to comply with detainer requests that drain their resources. And the bill's changed to the Department of Homeland Security's detainer authority surveys the current Fourth Amendment concerns associated with immigration detainers. It does not require any particularized finding about the individual, the basis of a probable cause determination, to provide for a particular determination of probable cause. In fact, in a recent study found that community trust jurisdictions are actually safer than their counterparts. Consider judgment. H.R. 3003 forces localities to abandon community trust principle, conscription of local officers in the federal immigration enforcement. Localities, of course, would rightfully resist this conscription. As punishment, this bill would rob them of vital law enforcement funding to prevent crime, prosecute criminals, and boost community policing ranks. So, the bill further compounds constitutional concerns by eliminating ability to detain an individual to obtain an independent, individualized review of his or her bond determination by a neutral decision maker. For these reasons, and there are others, I urge my colleagues to please oppose this dangerous, mean-spirited, and constitutionally suspect legislation. And Mr. Chairman, I have reserved the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Let me tell you something that he's not talking about from
my pleasure to yield 2 minutes.
Michigan.
From Iowa, Mr. King.
Michigan, look up Dearborn, Michigan, guys. The police in that state will tell you, do not go into that county. Go in that city. Do your research. As far as it hindering, yes, it doesn't hinder because they're illegal immigrants. They're not a legal citizen. It's rhetoric.
And the sanctuary cities legislation, which is before us right now, is something that I just looked back through my records and wondered how long have I slugged away on this. The first amendment I brought was in 2005 to cut off some funding to sanctuary cities. And then at each appropriations opportunity along with CJF and when there was a chance, I bring another amendment, 2005 on through 2014, 15, and in 2015, broader sanctuary cities legislation, which is the basis for this legislation. The misfortune and fortune of having the Root family as my constituents, and Sarah Root was tragically killed by an illegal alien on the street, and her father and mother have both been here to testify. Her mother's in town this day, and her father, Scott Root, testified before the committee. They bailed the killer of my daughter out of jail, money than it took to bury her in this country before we could have the funeral. Those words were some of the most chilling and mournful words that I have heard in this Congress. And this bill today honors his daughter's life, Michelle's daughter's life, Sarah, brings into play the enforcement that we need to have. We've got to put an end to sanctuary cities, which the bill does. Block the DOJ grants if they don't comply with the federal law, and refuse the warrants to the sanctuary cities because they'll just release them on the streets. Custody within 48 hours, and then the good faith hold harmless for ICE detainers when they got the wrong recommendation out of the Obama administration. This makes the right recommendation jurisdiction. So the private cause of action is also very, very useful to us. It's a good, solid bill. I thank the chairman and all of those that put the work in this today. I urge its adoption, and I yield back to the chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you. I would like to introduce and yield 5 minutes a member of the House Judiciary Committee, Ms. Zoe Lofgren of California.
The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill isn't about fixing our immigration system. In fact, it makes the system more dysfunctional and puts communities in peril. This bill is about telling communities how to police themselves and protect their people. It says that we here in D.C. than you do local police across the United States. Now, for more, local governments engage in what they call community trust policies, promote, among other things, allowing immigrant victims and witnesses to crime to report these offenses to local authorities without fear of immigration consequences. And years of locally informed experience have proven that this approach best ensures these communities' safety. I think that's why we have received communications from the National Fraternal Order of Police in opposition to this law enforcement task force at 36 sheriffs and chiefs across the country in opposition to this bill. The Sheriffs of America in opposition to this bill. The National Task Force to End Sexual and Domestic Violence against this bill, as well as the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, and the National Association of Counties. Not prohibited from doing their job. But as the San Jose Police Department has told me, San Jose police are not securities laws. They're not enforcing the federal tax laws. They're not enforcing the immigration laws of the United States. They're doing their job to protect their community against crime. Now, because they are doing that, is to remove funding from jurisdictions. And what would that funding be? Against violent gangs. It's grants to the anti-terrorism task force and the anti-methamphetamine program. For security to prevent terrorism in the United States. Grants from the BioWatch program to prevent terrorists from getting biohazards and killing us all. That's not smart. Programs away from local governments that are working with us to help keep America safe. And I always think, as I said earlier, bumper stickers here, we're doing laws. And it's important to take a look at the details of what's in this proposed bill. And to banning collaborative grants with localities, that's made available is a community, has a community trust policy. The Department of Homeland Security can refuse to honor warrants, legal warrants, that are issued by that jurisdiction. That's astonishing. That is simply astonishing, because what the local governments have said on the detainer policies is that the Fourth Amendment prevents them from holding people whose sentences have been served. There are a number of federal courts that have made that determination. You can't hold somebody on a civil detainer request. Well, there's a remedy to that. Get a warrant like anybody else. Amendment means something, and there's a remedy. Go get a warrant. I don't know why our federal government feels that they can upend constitutional law for their own convenience. The provision is what I find shocking. It says is that if local governments violate the law, violate a court order, cannot violate the Fourth Amendment, that they're immunized. The federal government's going to pay, go ahead, violate the law. I cannot remember at the time when we had a bill before us that said to states and localities, go ahead, violate the law. We're going to indemnify you for the violation. That's not the way our federal system should work, and it's not the way those of us who believe in our oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States think that things ought to work. Now, finally, something that I think is truly astonishing, a private cause of action against a state or locality, if because the detainer cannot be honored because of the federal court cases, police commits a crime, that it's the locality that bears the cost, not the criminal. This is a crazy, crazy provision. We should oppose this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Once more, we're dealing with illegal citizens, and that these states are violating federal law by protecting them.
What's crazy is what the city of San Francisco is doing with their taxpayer dollars, since it's reported just yesterday that San Francisco taxpayers could soon pay $190,000 in a lawsuit settlement with an illegal immigrant who was reported to federal immigration authorities in violation of the city of San Francisco's sanctuary city ordinance. Office confirmed this, and the settlement is expected to be confirmed by San Francisco supervisors in future hearings. People who are murdered, people who are injured, or I give myself additional 30 seconds, by people who are unlawfully present in the United States, day in court with the city of San Francisco or anyone else, apparently that they're willing to pay money in the country because they were properly turned over to federal authorities to be deported from this country. To yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shabbat, a member of the Judiciary Committee. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized. Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman from Virginia, our chairman, for his leadership on this, and I rise in strong support of the no sanctuary for it's been worked on by a whole number of members of the House. The adoption of dangerous sanctuary policies across the country makes it more difficult to adequately enforce our immigration laws, and needlessly puts American lives at risk. Unfortunately, sanctuary cities that fail to comply with federal law and deliberately refuse to cooperate with federal authorities become safe havens and criminal immigrants, because criminals know they are less likely to be detained in those cities, which are, by definition, sanctuary cities. Far too many innocent lives are put at risk when a criminal alien convicted, for example, of drunk driving or charged with another serious offense is not detained so they could be appropriately dealt with and, if warranted, deported from our country according to the law. It's essential that we pass this resolution, which will strengthen our nation's immigration laws, hold sanctuary cities accountable for public safety by requiring detention of criminal aliens. The bottom line is, if we expect our federal immigration authorities to enforce our nation's immigration laws, the American people, local officials need to cooperate, not defy federal immigration laws. Local officials who refuse to do so and instead give so-called sanctuary to those that have come to our country illegally and then committed crimes here, putting the very people that they were sworn to serve and to protect at risk. And unfortunately, this has been happening all over the country, where literally people come here illegally, commit crimes, and local entities decide not to enforce the law. I yield back my time. The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 3 minutes. On the committee, Mr. Gutierrez, who has worked tirelessly with myself and Ms. Lawson to make this measure more understandable.
Illinois is recognized.
I guess that's rhetoric.
African American, Muslim, women, they know what it's like to be targeted. 99% of the votes for this bill today will come from people who do not have to worry about racial profiling from themselves or their children. They represent. later, he said, whether they are citizens or legal permanent residents or whatever. I've talked to U.S. citizens. They didn't carry with them their birth certificate or a passport at all times in the country in which they were born. Let's be clear. Our Bible has been sued successfully to stop his racial profiling, and he has been charged criminally in federal court for his racial profiling tactics. And still the Republicans of the House want to make the law he's being sued for legal in the United States of America. Sometimes Democrats have to stand up for justice, for what is right when the chips are down. Well, the chips are down, and every immigrant family and every immigrant in America is going to remember who's when they needed Democrats to fight to keep families together when the chips were down. We must remind to refrain from engaging personalities or vice president. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized. Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized. I thank Chairman Goodlatte for yielding and for his leadership on this legislation. It is an honor to serve with him on the House Judiciary Committee, and I'm grateful to Senator King as well for producing Sarah's law. Today, the House of Representatives can pass a crucial piece of legislation to codify the tenets of two of President Trump's executive orders and enforcement. H.R. 3003, the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act, will finally hold accountable states, cities, and local law enforcement agencies that provide safe haven to illegal immigrants by refusing to cooperate with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. You know what's astonishing and you know what's shocking is that there are jurisdictions...
You guys can see the difference between party lines. Those who oppose and are for. They use the proper wordage, which is illegal immigrants, where the other side uses immigrants. There's a difference. Immigrants are here in the country legally, either through visas, through work programs, school programs, or become U.S. citizens through a process. There's a difference between immigrants and illegal immigrants.
A 21-year-old convenience store clerk and constituent of mine, Grant Ronnebeck, was working the graveyard shift at Quick Trip in Mesa, Arizona. 4 a.m., an illegal alien with a long criminal record, awaiting deportation proceedings, walked in and demanded a pack of cigarettes. Got the money before handing them over. The man shot him and left him to die. Sarah and Grant are far from the only Americans who have been impacted by illegal immigration. In 2014, Mesa, Arizona police officer Brandon Mendoza was killed in a wrong-way car crash by an illegal immigrant driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Stories like these, the Obama administration continues to promote policies that circumvented many of our immigration laws, allowing thousands of criminals to return to our communities. Policies to end. H.R. 3003 specifically targets illegals who commit serious crimes by preventing them from being released onto our streets during their deportation proceedings. Policies that place the priority on protecting all illegal aliens, including those who are violent criminals, over the rights and safety of Americans. It is refreshing to have a president who is willing to follow regular law and order. President Trump has taken active steps to reverse the failed policies of the previous administration. To yield additional 30 seconds to John Yielding. President Trump has taken active steps to reverse the failed policies of the Obama administration and has been vocally supportive of Congress's efforts to do the same. Bill is a positive step towards our duty of enforcing the nation's immigration laws, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this vital piece of legislation. Thank you, and I yield back. Joe Hill, the gentleman from Michigan, is recognized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now call on Mr. Nadler of New York for the ranking Intellectual Property Subcommittee and yield him 2 minutes. The gentleman from New York is recognized. Thank the gentleman for yielding, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 3003. This legislation withholds funding from cities that choose not to assist federal authorities in enforcing immigration laws. Besides being constitutionally suspect, highly counterproductive. Recognizing a good police system depends on building trust with their residents. The law enforcement officers from questioning victims of crime or witnesses to a crime about their immigration status, immigration information with federal authorities. They believe that their communities are at greater risk when a victim of domestic violence is afraid to ask the police for protection from her abuser for fear of deportation, or when the witnesses to a murder refuse to assist law enforcement in tracking down the perpetrator because they are afraid that immigration status. These cities have concluded that taking in London supports immigration laws would destroy trust between immigrants and local law enforcement. Let's say. But conversely, this bill would punish these cities by denying them the funds that they need to protect public safety. Funding to hire new police officers, grants to combat the opioid crisis, and money to reduce the rape kit backlog in this bill. Not only does this raise serious constitutional concerns, it is simply bad policy that will lead to more crime, not less. Not bad enough, the bill would also authorize mandatory indefinite detention of certain categories of immigrants, process, even if they present no danger to their community. Detention is repugnant to our values of fairness and individual liberty. It's the ugly myth that immigrants are more dangerous and likely to commit than native-born Americans, and that erodes the fundamental protections that we guarantee to all who are present in this country. Positive steps to improve communication between federal, state, and local authorities. This bill demonizes immigrants, punishes communities that seek to build trust between immigrants and law enforcement, and authorizes indefinite detention of certain immigrants, all while making us less safe. For each of these reasons, this bill should be defeated. I urge my colleagues to vote no to my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time, it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes for Mr. Mack.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about two very honorable lives, Paul Besau and Lahiri Garcia, who were both taken from us far too soon by the criminal acts of one who was illegally in our country. A death of our innocent neighbors that is especially devastating. Had our immigration laws been upheld, and had they been working. Paul and Lahiri were in my community. Left behind his loving wife Dawn and his 6-year-old daughter Allison that you see here behind me. When I spoke with Paul's widow, she rightfully said that if our country wasn't too afraid or inept to enforce its immigration law, her husband would still be with her today, and she is absolutely right. Lahiri's wife, Julie Garcia, she told me how hard it was for her 4 children to not have their father this Father's Day. She expected to grow old with her husband, but because this man wasn't sent home the first 3 times he was pulled over, she will no longer have that opportunity. Both wives, both mothers expressed to me this belief. They don't understand why this was allowed to happen. And for the life of me, I can't understand why it's allowed either. The bottom line is that this should never happen to anyone. Sanctuary cities are a violation of the rule of law. They're absolutely unacceptable. They cannot be tolerated. We must enforce this rule of law. It is, in fact, the right of every American to be protected by this government. It is not the right of anybody to spend one day, one moment in our country illegally or without invitation. This is addressing this epidemic. Our bills, they crack down on dangerous sanctuary policies that put their lives at risk. So let us ensure that unlawful immigrants convicted of crimes are in fact detained and are in fact deported. Let's pass these bills. More importantly, let us be convicted that what happened to Paul Lahiri is never allowed to happen again.
Thank you, and I yield back. The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased now recognize for 2.5 minutes the ranking member of the Crime and Terrorism and Homeland Security Subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee, Congresswoman Jackson Whitney of Texas, for 2.5 minutes.
The lady from Texas is recognized.
I thank the gentleman. I venture to say that not one of us who come to this floor doubts that any local law enforcement, our neighbors, do any second guessing to arrest drunk drivers and others, and that they're held to the high calling of justice. I do not want to be associated and weak on those who kill and maim, no matter who they are. It takes away the mercy of the United States that we're known for. Let me tell you why. The Fraternal Order of Police, which by no means is shy of and says that local police departments answer to local civilian government, and it is the local government which enacts statutes and ordinances. Law enforcement officers have to be able to abide by the law. It is unjust to penalize law enforcement and the citizens they serve because Congress disagrees with the enforcement priorities with respect to our nation's immigration laws, and they're right. Say, it also penalizes our hardworking government of mayors and county leaders who are in fact trying to run the government and to ensure that victims of domestic violence, even as immigrants, are able to be treated. But what about who indicate that this bill will serve no good and no good can come to a similar bill in the state? And so, let me say to you, I stand with the Catholic Church, and I'm not Catholic. What are our values? And this church opposes the idea of our values. Let me be very clear as I close. We're doing the Sanctuary Cities bill, but I want to know about the integrity of this place. I end, Mr. Speaker, by apologizing to Mika Brzezinski, to the press, for the horrible words that were said about a bleeding face, that we can entrust this law or any other law to this president. He has lost the trust, and I will vote for nothing. He steps down.
Who not to vote for? Re-elect, because she's not going to vote. She's not about we the people, for the people. She's not even about the people that she represents, that keeps electing her.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized. Speaker, at this time, it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates, a member of the Judiciary Committee. For yielding, and while we've heard a good amount of inflammatory rhetoric, my remarks will speak solely to the facts. And Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of keeping America safe. In less than 2 years, over 8 documented immigrants, all subject to ICE detainment, were released because of local non-cooperation policies. 63% of those illegal aliens had prior convictions or had been marked a public safety concern. They went on to be rearrested nearly 4,300 times, committing nearly 7,500 new offenses. The facts are clear. States and local governments that do not comply with our immigration laws are putting American citizens at risk. Found that in 2014, 75% of all criminal defendants who were convicted and sentenced for federal drug offenses. As of 2014, illegal immigrants made up roughly 3.5% of our population, but committed over 10% of all murders. Criminal illegal immigrants poses a threat to our society, our safety, and our economy. Pay nearly $19 million a day to house and care for the 450,000 criminal immigrants in jails and prisons who are all eligible for deportation. Federal immigration laws, the results are often tragic. County, Texas, decided she would only turn over illegal aliens who have committed a narrow list of crimes. One illegal alien to be released on bail despite sexually abusing his girlfriend's 9-year-old daughter for over a year. Released an illegal immigrant after he served a brief domestic assault sentence to detain her. Soon after, he went on to kill a 15-year-old girl. America wept as 32-year-old Kate Steinley was killed by a stray bullet. An illegal immigrant who had shot that gun had 7 previous felony convictions. More stories of innocent lives lost, of families destroyed, and of crimes that could have been prevented. Every day in America, another family grieves because of the policies of sanctuary cities. I rise for the protection of our citizens, the safety of our communities, the defense of our country, and ultimately to see the end of sanctuary cities. And I yield back.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Speaker, I'm pleased now to represent our caucus chair, Mr. Crowley of New York, for 1.5 minutes.
Recognized.
I thank the gentleman from Michigan yielding with such time. Much of the same rhetoric we're hearing right now from the other side of the aisle is similar to the same rhetoric we heard in the 40s and 50s and 60s against the Irish when they came to America. We heard talking about Italian Americans in the 1880s and 1890s. We continue to hear about African Americans in our country. The same type of rhetoric in terms of the criminal activity that takes place. And what we've seen happen is a further incarceration and enslavement of African Americans in our nation today because of similar rhetoric. Clear, immigrant and criminal are not synonyms, but you make it out to be that way by the passage of this legislation. In New York City, James O'Neill, the police commissioner, has said this law will make New York City less safe than it is today. I remind my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, 9/11 happened in my hometown. Since then, there have been there have been no major incidents of terrorism in New York City because New York City was able to collect information, much of it from the undocumented community in our city, but events from happening again. And that's why this bill is so egregious, because the first responsibility of the federal government is to protect its citizens from foreign invasion and foreign attack. This bill will withhold terrorism money from New York City. It will prevent the city of New York to continue to collect the information. Other cities around this country, they need to protect their citizens, to develop the trust to have the police department and the police department in its communities. That's how law enforcement works. That's how they catch the criminals. And that's how in a city like New York, they do help the federal government deport criminals for committing criminal offenses. When did I yield back the balance of my time?
But yet, since he wants to throw 9/11, by being a sanctuary city, you protect any illegal terrorist that comes into your city. Apples for you. That we're talking about the apple, big apple. You deny investigators, and you harbor and protect an illegal terrorist that comes into your city. That's what sanctuary cities do. point in his rhetoric.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Across the country, more than 300 municipalities have adopted policies to limit law enforcement officers the cooperation with federal authorities, making it harder to keep our families and our communities safe. In the state of Tennessee, the National City Council has recently been advancing legislation to become one of these sanctuary cities. Funds to sanctuary cities defies logic and it demands attention. Yesterday, I offered an amendment to expand the bill before us today so that sanctuary cities would no longer have access to community block grants, economic development grants as well. That would spend more than about $300 billion taxpayer dollars a year to local communities. The Community Development Block Grant Program says its purpose is to provide services to vulnerable communities and address issues that, quote, pose an immediate threat to the health or welfare of a community. Vulnerable than a 6-year-old girl in Lebanon, Tennessee, who was sexually molested while she was sleeping. Charges were brought against a criminal, illegal immigrant for repeatedly breaking into her room at night and making video while he assaulted her. The evil individual had been in police custody before. And for Kate Steinley, who has been talked about many times on this floor, her killer has a criminal record of not 1 or 2 or 3, but 7 felonies.
And deported 5 times.
Not 1, 3 times, but 5 times. Several legislators around this country want to give sanctuary. We need more communication and cooperation between local, state, and federal law enforcement officers who are trying to keep our communities safe. It's time to stop giving taxpayer dollars to these cities. And I'm voting for this bill today to do just that. I yield back to that for my time.
Yield back. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased now to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly.
Virginia is recognized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend. Thank you, Frankie Meffenberg. I don't know what our president is. I'm not here as a local legislator. I'm here as a local government person. I spent 14 years in local government.
No, you're there because we, the people.
We're trying to solve crime by seeking cooperation from the immigrant community. This bill will make it harder. Most of our local police chiefs would tell you that if you'd listen to them.
No, but your governor say 1/3 of America dies every day to gun violence.
Members, we decry federal mandates and overreach, except when they want one. Here we are dictating how local government should implement federal immigration laws.
Oh, by the way, 1/3 in 3 days wouldn't be America left.
Between the police and community, collaboration and that trust. How can we expect our nation's immigrants to turn to the police if they fall victim to a crime will be deported or separated from their families? The bill will punish local police departments and those relationships. It should be defeated. This local government guy will oppose this bad policy bill. I yield back. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized. Mr. Speaker, at this time it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Young. The gentleman from Iowa is recognized. Yesterday I was at the White House with President Trump and his parents and relatives of those who were killed by way on all of us. Shared was given by Michelle Root about her beautiful daughter who was struck down and killed in a senseless way by someone here illegally. Michelle will be out here today, and she's a great advocate.
In late January of 2016, Sarah's parents, Michelle and Scott Root, started their day with joy. That day, their beautiful daughter, Sarah, graduated. She had the whole world ahead of her. The day ended with loss and tragedy, an unimaginable loss. Sarah was killed by a drunk driver here illegally. He was so sensitive. Sarah had her whole life in front of her. And then through incompetence and uncertainty about the law and policy or the both, but for sure, a lack of common sense, Sarah's killer was released. And today, Sarah's killer is free. Today, Sarah's parents, Michelle and Scott, and Sarah's brother, Scotty, fight for Sarah's justice. They fight for her honor. They fight to make sure no other characters know what has to go through the tragic ordeal they had to go through. My vote today is about policy, but it is in honor of Sarah's. I don't know so many they have for their child. Sarah will always be loved and certainly not forgotten by her family and friends and those who never even met her. She touched their hearts. You need to advocate in Selma Sweet. My colleagues in Ohio, across the border in Nebraska, to support this legislation and fought for it to be incorporated into this. Taking care of Sarah now, her memory lives on. I urge the passage of this legislation. I yield the floor. It's in order to introduce house guests in the gallery. Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased now to yield 1 minute to the former justice from the state of Texas.
I think they should be allowed to invite guests like that.
Involved here today is a sanctuary that this sorry bill provides for prejudice. This is the Trump counterpart to the outrageous SB 4 that Governor Greg Abbott has been promoting in Texas. To the rhetoric of last year about the bad film for a Mexico and Mexicans. Well, I'll tell you, I want the bad hombres off the street, no matter where they come from. But I look to my local police chiefs, to my local sheriffs and law enforcement officers. The best way is to protect our families from crime. And they say maintaining the confidence of the immigrant community is vital. And measures like this, politicians in Washington interfering with and attempting to intimidate local law enforcement officers, is the opposite of what all these speeches claim that they do.
He's not here representing his state, but his state has passed legislation about sanctuary cities, about people obstructing. Cops, no matter what, will go to jail if they obstruct. That was a law that they passed just this year in Texas.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 30 seconds to respond and point out many of the victims of these crimes are Hispanic, African American, and others seated around the cabinet table at the White House yesterday, pleading for this legislation because they'd lost their loved ones. They would much rather have been able to rewind the tape and been with those loved ones by people who were illegally present in the United States, and they would never have suffered if our laws had simply been enforced. At this time, it is my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Dunn. Florida is recognized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 3003, the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act. Congress has a responsibility to protect the rule of law, provide for the safety of our citizens. Sanctuary cities and believe that we should be doing more to enforce our federal immigration laws. The No Sanctuary for Criminals Act clarifies the authority of the Department of Homeland Security to order the detainment of illegal immigrants arrested for crimes until they can be processed for deportation. It also cuts off certain federal grants to cities and states that violate federal immigration law. It's simple. If you don't comply with the federal immigration law, you're not eligible for certain federal grants. Enforce our immigration laws. National attention was brought to the consequences of the sanctuary city policies by the death penalty, who was killed by an illegal immigrant who had previously been convicted and deported 5 times. If the city of San Francisco had worked with the federal government to enforce the federal immigration law instead of releasing this criminal, we'd be alive today. Our current system of laws failed, Kate, and all those who have died at the hands of convicted felons in this country illegally. I'm honored to represent, do not understand why some American cities get to flaunt the law and not cooperate with federal officials. This legislation makes it clear that they don't, that sanctuary cities are illegal. Jurisdictions accountable and stopping sanctuary cities, we will make Americans of every background safer on our streets. Colleagues, to support this important legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from New York is recognized. I'm sorry, from Michigan, excuse me.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased now to recognize from Illinois, Cambridge civil rights leader, Ms. Schakowsky, for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman. I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 003. In jurisdictions within my district, Cook County, cities like Chicago, Evanston, Skokie, which are
leading the crime
called welcoming cities ordinances.
every state.
In order to reassure immigrants
Nice counties.
that they can.
I wouldn't want to go there on vacation now.
talk to law enforcement within our jurisdiction. It's taken the village of Skokie years, decades really, to form the bridges that we have to trust with our immigrant community. These policies work. A January study found that sanctuary cities tend to be safer and have stronger economies than not. So we push communities to abandon sanctuary cities, breaking down that hard-earned trust between immigrants and law enforcement. Law enforcement into immigration enforcement makes cities less safe. Thank you. Thank you. It makes immigrants less likely to report crime. This bill protects criminals in our communities and not victims. And I urge my colleagues to vote for safer communities and vote against this bill. I thank the gentleman.
But yet those counties, including Chicago, lead the highest crime rate. Same way with California and New York. The sanctuary cities have higher crime rates. She talks about jobs. Illegals, give them jobs, pay them less money instead of giving it to hard-working Americans for what pay is deserved.
And H.R. 3003, the No Criminals Act. I support these bills for the sake of Kate Steinle and every single one of those who share her tragic fate. She was murdered in broad daylight by a violent, criminal, illegal alien. This was an easily preventable and heartbreaking crime, and we
Sorry about the dogs.
cannot fail the American people by refusing to act on these bills. The government's first responsibility on convenience. In 2011, a GAO study found that the aliens committed more than 25,000 homicides, more than 69 offenses, 14,000 kidnapping, 42,000 robberies and 213,000 assaults, among other offenses. Every single one of these is too many. Very few things in this world we can get it at 100%, but these are 100% preventable if these people would not have been here. These are preventable crimes, completely preventable, and we must stop the willful neglect of complacency by government officials who refuse. Existing. This is not new. This is existing law we're asking them to enforce. We're requiring them to enforce. 2017 Washington Times article, nearly jurisdictions have sanctuary policies that block, limit ICE from apprehending criminal aliens. The January 2017 article from the Washington Examiner reported that from January 2014 to September 2015, sanctuary jurisdictions rejected 1,000 ICE detainers. Those are 17,000 criminals that are out on the street that we know about, that we let go. The injury, these sanctuary jurisdictions seek federal funds. Federal law enforcement efforts to remove the dangerous criminal aliens from the streets. 16, Mr. Speaker, it's time to put Americans first, and we support our order by supporting these proposals. I yield back. The gentleman yields. Is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how many time remains on each side?
The gentleman from Michigan has 7.5 minutes. The gentleman from Virginia has 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Blockman, for a unanimous consent request.
California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask unanimous consent to put in the record letters from the Nurse Association, the National Fraternal Order of Police, Law Enforcement Task Force, League of Cities, U.S. Conference of Mayors, the Catholic Bishops, Task Force, and Sexual and Domestic Violence, and 417 organizations in opposition to this bill.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I'm now pleased to greet the gentleman from California, Mr. Panetta, for 1 minute.
California is recognized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am opposed to H.R. 3003 because if this
Of course, it takes millions from you.
It would punish our communities more than it would punish the criminals. The bill would deny critical funding for our police departments. As a former 20-year prosecutor in the local counties, I know firsthand how much our local police rely on federal funding, not just to do their job, but they keep our communities safe. Any decrease in any sort of funding, the safety of our officers as they strive to protect and serve our communities. This law will not only affect our police officers' safety, but it will negatively affect security in our community. Yes, the underlying intent of the law is to make it easier for ICE to target undocumented or criminals. I get it, but it's not that simple. My district has seen 2 large-scale raids by ICE. Yes, they swept up criminals, but they also snagged collaterals, law-abiding people who were here in the wrong place at the right time. Cast a complete pall over the community that affected our ability to enforce our laws. As the gang prosecutor, over and over, I experienced people who were afraid to come forward out of fear of retaliation, afraid of the police, afraid of the courts, and afraid of our government. That is why I'm opposed to 3003. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Well, you shouldn't be afraid if you're legal. But if you're illegal, yeah, I can see why you're afraid.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield California, the senior member of the House Judiciary Committee, Ms. Lofgren, 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to why localities adopt these community trust policies. somebody in San Francisco who is suing the city. In a way, that shows the efficacy of the trust policies. This man, Mr. Figueroa Zarquino, was a victim of crime. His truck was stolen. He went into the police department to report that his truck was stolen. The police, there was a removal order that was 10 or 20 years old. You know, he has a child, he's a working person. When he went outside, he was picked up by ICE. So I think what that tells other people who are victims of crime is who might have an outstanding removal order, don't report the crime. If you've lost your truck, it's been stolen, you have an additional.
Vigilante, an additional minute.
Not that I'm for stealing trucks, but here's a bigger problem. The cities of Houston and Los Angeles report a dramatic drop-off in reports of sexual violence. Why? Because immigrants are afraid to report. Not just because they might be undocumented, but they might have a sister or a next-door neighbor, a spouse who's undocumented, even if they're a citizen. And so what's happened is with these threats come an unwillingness of immigrants to report crime, to be witnesses to crime, to keep our communities safe. These stories that we've heard of the victims of crime are heartbreaking, but we are not without remedies under current law. You know, the most important law in our country is the Constitution. The Constitution includes the Fourth Amendment. And if I may have 30 additional seconds.
I'll give her an additional minute.
The Constitution is the most important law we have. We read it aloud on the first day of our Congress. It includes the Fourth Amendment, which requires a probable cause and warrant. A bunch of courts have made that ruling relative to detainers. Well, that doesn't leave the federal government without remedies. Get a warrant. There is not a jurisdiction in the United States that will not honor a judicial warrant. Don't blame the local police. Look to the Department of Homeland Security for why they have dropped the ball and been unwilling to take the steps within their authority today to make sure that there's someone that they need, that they get a warrant, and they obtain that person the next step in their process. To suggest that this misguided bill is the answer is a big mistake. And I think the gentleman for yielding and might be that.
Okay, guys, once again, legal citizen, illegal citizen. Legal citizen, constitutional rights, Bill of Rights apply. Those rights do not apply to an illegal citizen. Do I agree with that? Not entirely. We need change in our immigration policy.
I stand in support of our institutions. I also stand in memory of Sarah Root, a young woman who was murdered by a drunk driver in January 16. District for Nebraska 02, graduating from Bellevue University with a 4.0 grade point average. The bright future ahead of her. She was beloved by her parents and her extended family. If you see her picture, that beautiful smile would warm any room. The perpetrator was from Honduras, posted bail, and never was seen again. ICE failed to hold him, and justice was denied. This happened again. The bill today will fix this. We can't let a travesty of justice like this ever happen again. Our systems have to hold people accountable. People go like this and they leave, a travesty of justice occurs. Today we stand with Michelle Root, the mother of Sarah Root, who is here. We stand with Scott Root. Remember Sarah Root. Never again.
Someone yields back. Gentleman from Michigan's recognized.
Speaker, I'm prepared to close, and I will make my closing comments with the time remaining. My colleagues, H.R. 3004 is not making our community safer. Plus, the bill's sponsors would heeded the strong opposition of organizations like the Fraternal Order of Police, who stated that, quote, "Healing needed assistance to law enforcement agencies, policy-making role, public safety efforts, and protection." And the U.S. Conference of Mayors who cautioned, quote, "H.R. 3000 is a bad bill for our cities and for our nation. It would jeopardize public safety for local governments to litigation and potential findings of damage. Instead, this legislation is a down payment on the President's and the Republican majority's mass deportation bill, or deportation plan. This bill, and the one that we will debate later today, is a portion of the mass deportation bill known as the Davis-Oliver Act, which has been cited for the Trump administration and supported by anti-immigrant groups such as Numbers USA and the Center for Immigration Safety. And so I respectfully urge my colleagues to oppose this dangerous legislation. And Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
What you do is ask the people of Michigan how safe they feel in their state,
Virginia is recognized.
especially when it comes to the Dearborn area.
May I inquire how much time? Virginia has 2.5 minutes. I yield myself the balance of the time. Gentleman's recognized. First, the only law enforcement agencies that risk losing any federal grant because of this legislation are those agencies that, without any outside compulsion, deliberately choose to violate federal law by outright prohibiting their law enforcement officers from voluntarily communicating with ICE and cooperating with it in the enforcement of federal law. Let me also be clear that this bill does not require state and local law enforcement agencies to comply with ICE detainers. And it does not seek to cut off any federal grants to jurisdictions that choose not to comply. Finally, the long settled principle of constitutional law. And let me remind you that all of these law enforcement officers vow to defend the Constitution. And the Constitution grants supremacy to federal immigration law. When there's a conflict with federal immigration law, state laws that are in conflict are invalid, preempted by federal law under the 10th Amendment. State and local law enforcement agencies have, under the 10th Amendment, state and local law enforcement agencies have no obligation to comply with unconstitutional provisions of state or local law that ask them to violate 89 State Code, Section 1373. And then again, getting back to the amazing news that we have, that the city of San Francisco has just agreed to pay $190,000 to an illegal alien because the San Francisco sheriff complied with an ICE detainer, turned the alien over to ICE, apparently in violation of San Francisco policy. That individual under federal law, because of the victim of a crime, will be eligible to apply for a U visa. Respect for the rule of law is the way to keep communities safe. Respect for the rule of law is the way to make sure that people like Kate Steinle are not murdered in San Francisco, as we've heard of other murders all during this debate today by people who are unlawfully present in the United States. Therefore, they are punishable crime. Law enforcement in this country needs to cooperate. Most law enforcement officers want that to be done. Let's support them. Let's support this legislation that the rule of law is upheld.
Gentlemen's time has expired. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 414, the previous question is ordered on the bill. Proposement and third reading of the bill. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
The bill to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to modify provisions relating to assistance by states and political subdivision of states in the enforcement of federal immigration laws and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
I have a motion to recommit at the desk
Is the gentlewoman opposed to the bill?
in its current form.
The gentlewoman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Ms. Jennings of Florida moves to recommit the bill H.R. 3003 to the Committee on the Judiciary with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. Page 6, insert after line 5 the following. Safety exception. For purposes of this subsection, a state or a political subdivision of a state should not be found to be out of compliance with subsection A or B if the state or political subdivision of the state certifies to the Attorney General that such compliance would endanger public safety.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlewoman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes in support of her motion.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. This is the final amendment to the bill, which will not kill the bill or send it back to committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage as amended. I stand here today not just as a member of Congress, a 7-year veteran of law enforcement, and as a former police chief. As such, I'm warned of the harm that this bill in its current form will cause for a law enforcement agency, police chief. It was my responsibility to reduce crime and maintain livable neighborhoods. Neighborhoods where families can live in peace and enjoy local parks, community centers, restaurants, and shopping. Neighborhoods where children can walk to school and play in their front and backyards without fear. A community that everyone in America deserves, one where they feel safe and secure. H.R. 3003 impedes on law enforcement's ability to effectively create an environment that will erode the trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. The local police are the first ones to respond. They are the thin blue line that stands between those who are in this country, who are trying to live in peace, and those that would do them harm. We want our neighbors, immigrants, to call the police to report crime without fear or hesitation. When they do not, Mr. Speaker, our community is at the mercy of the criminals. This does not make our communities more safe. That is what is at stake with the bill before us. Supporters of the bill claim that it has an exemption witnesses, but it is not a complete exemption. Law enforcement officers investigate and interview witnesses. Their goal is to solve crime, regardless of the immigration status of victims and witnesses, including victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. And there was a rule committee that would have exempted victims and witnesses from all of the bill's intrusive requirements. The Rules Committee blocked me from offering that amendment, but the bill in its current form would undermine law enforcement's ability to do its job, our communities less safe. Mr. Speaker, don't just take my word for it. The National Fraternal Order of the Police stands against the bill. They represent over 330,000 law enforcement officers across the nation. These officers are not responsible for creating laws.
federal grant funding for political reasons impedes their ability to solve crime. As the FOP writes, assistance to law enforcement agencies which have no policy-making role will hurt public safety efforts. No one knows our communities better than the law enforcement officials formed to protect their communities, which is why I have offered this motion, which would exempt from the mandates and penalties in the bill those jurisdictions in which local law enforcement officials conclude that the mandates in the bill would endanger public safety. Politics should never impede public safety. The President
We'll discuss that after this.
that when lawmakers vote on this bill, they should put America's safety first. Agree. And I urge my colleagues to support this motion and put our public safety first. Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time and ask for the yeas and the nays.
Many of these
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does
fraternal order of the police, sheriffs, it's only a fraction. Many of them are all for this bill. These, when you're dealing with those higher-ups, they get elected into those positions.
Everyone deserves to feel safe. Deserve to feel safe. When she was walking down the pier with her father in San Francisco when she was killed, enacting this legislation endangers public safety. Not the opposite, as those on the other side have argued. Plus, local government officials who have instructed their law enforcement officers to not cooperate with federal law enforcement officers to take dangerous criminals off of our streets. This motion to recommit would say, oh, they will have to certify that such compliance would endanger public safety, and then the law wouldn't apply. Reasoning. The non-enforcement of immigration laws has led to the bolstering of sanctuary jurisdiction policies in communities throughout the United States, hamper the enforcement of federal law, and do nothing to truly promote trust between law enforcement and U.S. citizens. I'd say a common sense approach to fixing the damage caused by sanctuary policies without mandating any affirmative duty. In order to be in compliance with Section 1373 of the Immigration and Nationality Act as amended in this bill, states and localities have no affirmative duty to act. They have no obligations to cooperate or communicate or even engage with U.S. immigration and customs enforcement at any level. They simply may not affirmatively restrict a government entity, including law enforcement, from cooperating or communicating with ICE. So many on the other side of the aisle view compliance with this provision as a condition for eligibility for certain grant programs. This is not a novel concept, and compliance with the Section 1373 is already a condition of eligibility programs. As for detainers, H.R. 3003 creates the probable cause standard. Many have argued was lacking for so long. Once enacted, states and localities can look to federal law to receive clarification on what probable cause standard is employed before the detainer request is placed. The threat of expensive and time-consuming frivolous litigation is abated by providing immunity for jurisdictions to faith in honoring a detainer. Finally, this bill ensures that dangerous criminal aliens convicted of drunk driving or not yet convicted of very serious crime are prevented from freely walking the streets of our communities. This bill is a strong first step in ensuring that our immigration laws are enforced. I urge my colleagues to vote down this motion to recommit today's bill and send a message that sanctuary policies will not be tolerated. Law will prevail. I yield back.
The gentleman from Virginia yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. Motion.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion is not agreed
I
to.
call for the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed.
And implement another section of this bill.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, seek recognition? Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 415, I call up H.R. 3004, case law. The title of the bill.
H.R. 3004, a bill to amend Section 276 of the Immigration and Nationality Act relating to reentry of removable aliens.
Pursuant to House Resolution 415, the bill is considered read. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers, will each control 30 minutes. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 3004. Without
Puts it
objection.
on July 3rd.
Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized. Mr. Speaker, for too long, illegal re-entry of criminal aliens has been viewed as a minor felony, with only a fraction of those repeat offenders ever seeing the inside of a federal courtroom. Section 276 of the Immigration and Nationality Act provides federal prosecutors with the tools necessary to truly deter criminal aliens from re-entering the United States. Unfortunately, it does not go far enough to act as a deterrent. Criminal aliens view the risk as worth the reward, as most charged under this section of law are given infuel sentences that belie the severity.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up.
Aliens who re-enter to the United States.
I want to get some comments and stuff. The link for those that want to go continue watching it is in the comment section or in the description. I'll also leave the links to the website so you can always keep checking on this. Because like I said, there's a few things I want to cover and talk about on some of these issues. First off, what we're dealing with, and I've pointed out the different rhetorics, we're dealing with legal citizens versus illegal. That's the difference. These sanctuary cities, as I pointed out with the guy from New York, talking about how this would hinder us, make us left. He wanted to bring up 9/11. Well, by being a sanctuary city, he's saying we protect even terrorists that come in here illegally. That's what he's saying. And he wanted to use 9/11. That should piss off every single American person in this country. You know, we have immigration. This is not even an immigration. We have immigration issues. Our immigration bills and laws need to be revisited, refixed, and changed. We need to make it easier so they can come to our country legally. But here's the most important part of this whole argument back and forth that's going. Once you enter this country by not following the process, you've committed a crime. Therefore, you have already violated a law. You know, I've got experience. My mom, like I said, my mom is from Brazil. She's now a U.S. citizen. The process takes too long. The process is flawed. It takes a lot of money. And, you know, I do understand a lot of these people are trying to flee oppressions, persecutions, to get a better way of life. And the process takes too long. You know, if they're not young enough to get a student visa, or they don't have the money to get the student visa, we need to make some changes to our immigration policy for taking in new citizens. Because yes, this country was based on immigration. but our laws are still archaic. But like I said, it goes back to the point, what is being argued here is there's a right way to go about it. Offering sanctuary is not fixing the immigration problems. It's just telling the people to come illegally in will harbor you and protect you. And we're starting to see in these states that have sanctuary cities, the crime rate is through the roof. You know, like I said, pointed out that lady from Chicago or Illinois, how she was talking about the states, about jobs. Well, yeah, I know. I pointed out with Lowe's. Contractors would go to Lowe's, pick up their morning supplies, and hire illegal immigrants. Why? Because they don't have to pay them what they would pay a skilled construction person like me, a skilled laborer like me. It's cheap. It's slave labor. That's taking a job from my pocket. It allows factories and stuff to hire them, pay them less because they're going to work. And I'll be the first to tell you, a lot of these illegals, there's some hard-working people that deserve to be treated no better than we were when it comes to pay, instead of treated like slaves. You know, the problem is they're here illegally. They can apply for work visas to come in here to work, to do farm work and stuff, and construction work. But we need to make it also change those processes to make it easier. But we need to end the sanctuary cities. We need to end the obstruction. They're saying, oh, it's going to make these places unsafe. No, you're making it unsafe for your people by telling the police department and the other agencies not to follow the federal law. You're making your states unsafe, not the police department. The police department wants to uphold the law. And as I said, I'd talk about the fraternal order of police, sheriffs. Remember, when you start getting higher up, once you're no longer a police officer out on duty, you become a career politician. They're in it for the politics. Something for you guys to think about, look up. You know, I've talked to cops in Dearborn, Michigan. They'll flat out tell you, a U.S. citizen, American, they will tell you, do not go into Dearborn. We cannot protect you. You will not be safe. How can I not be safe in my own fucking country? How can I not be protected by a police officer in my own country for being in a city? For those that don't know about Dearborn, Michigan, look it up. So that senator that was doing the previous stuff for Michigan, he doesn't represent Michigan. If you ask the Michigan people, they're tired of it. And Michigan's not a sanctuary city. They're just taking in so many refugees that a whole city that I grew up around, been to, is completely changed. It's more like, do the research, guys. I showed you some tools today. Showed you how to come here. Congress.gov. You can pay attention to what they're doing, how they're debating these things. I'm sorry I didn't leave it play for longer, but you know, I want to keep this educational too, and at the same point, it's just rhetoric going back and forth. I've showed you the process. I've showed you how they're not a lot of these aren't for the people. They're not for the people, guys. It's supposed to be we the people for the people. Some of those, they're not representing me or you. They're not representing our safety, our protection. They're definitely not upholding the Constitution. They want to claim it. They want to use the Constitution, but like I said, there's a difference here. Citizen, non-citizen, actually not even non-citizen, illegal citizen. Because there's non-citizens that have the right to be here, that have visas and stuff. They're just not a citizen. And our Constitution protects them because they're here under a visa or a work permit. There's a difference between legal and illegal, and that's the argument. Don't let the rhetoric fool you. I'll be the first to tell you immigration policies need changed. They're not right. They need fixed. But you can't let people come in illegally. There's a right way and a wrong way. The right way for these sanctuaries, those who want to support the sanctuaries, the right way is changing the immigration policy. making it easier for people to attain work visas, become citizens. But you can't give illegal people come across your illegally sanctuary, because what happens, you're also allowing a repeat of 9/11. So if that senator wanted to bring up 9/11, I'll use it. I have no problem. We all remember it. And I think many of us may have forgotten it. Maybe it's time we start reusing it. Remember what happened. Remember how we all came together. We dropped our divisions and were united. What he said and what the sanctuary cities are about will protect even the radical terrorists that come into their cities. That's some food for thought. Like I said, I've showed you Congress.gov. I showed you how to check executive orders. It's important that you pay attention to, when you can. You see a bill that concerns you, follow it. I showed you can click to get updates, alerts. Now, as you guys seen, you've seen the voting process. You've seen how they'll try to add something to it. That should be, we should demand that stops. A bill should be voted on as it is. There should be no amendment, no nothing added to it. Either you pass it or you deny it, then you go back and rework it if you deny it. We need to put an end to them putting 3,000 pages in a bill where they slide in a bunch of other bills. No, we're dealing with this. I mean, we watched pretty much 3 different bills, but they're all part of the same bill. Make it one bill. I don't care if you take a week to debate it. But I do care when you start trying to slide other things and you just make it so confusing. It's not supposed to be confusing. It's supposed to be common sense. And the worst part, I saved all this for the end because I wanted you guys to see the process. I wanted this to be educational. I also wanted to give you a chance to call in if you so chose or enter the Hangouts with me and bring your opinions. But I also know nobody wants to watch this. That's the problem. It's not the solution. The solution is paying attention, not believing what keeps getting edited. Understand the rhetoric. As I've pointed out clearly, we're dealing with citizen, not a illegal citizen. Within our citizens, we have non-citizens too. They are protected by the Constitution. A legal citizen that came over is not protected by the Fourth Amendment, is not protected by the Constitution. They're not protected. They've already committed a crime. So there should be no obstruction. They should be turned over immediately to ICE. And we need to stop these sanctuary states from releasing inmates that are wanted by ICE. Or obstructing them from taking them. Also understand when they start talking about fraternal or police or sheriffs, these people, all these people off back there. Remember, when you're dealing with the fraternal order of police, those are people you elected, voted for to be chief of police. Which means you control who's in there. So if they're not about we the people, they're not about honoring our constitutional rights and Bill of Rights, do not elect them back in. Sheriffs, same way. But from every cop and police officer I've talked to, every sheriff I've talked to about these issues, they agree. I don't know where they're finding these people that don't agree. And to you law enforcement officers that happen to be in these sanctuaries, stand up. Demand that they honor our Constitution. Demand that they honor and allow you to do your jobs to protect the citizens, the U.S. citizens and the non-citizens that are protected because they're here legally. It's the illegal ones we want out. We want the criminals locked up. And we want the illegal criminals not locked up. That's the other thing. I don't want them locked up. Our prison's full of them. We want them sent back to the countries they came from. And there's a way to stop them from returning. Maybe we need to build a prison for a border wall. and send the illegals there when they commit a crime, the real violent offenders, so they can never get out in that way. You get both, a view of both worlds. Just saying. I mean, the irony of it is, a wall is not going to solve all of our issues. It might decrease some of it, but they're going to find a way around it, under it, over it, or they'll start using the waterways, which means we'll have to enforce the Coast Guards. They still do it, though. That's what they're not telling you. This stuff's happening even on our coasts. They're coming in through the waterways. There's going to be no permanent fix to keep people from coming in illegally. They'll find a way. But I just wanted to show you how our system works. I wanted to show you the inside glimpse. You know, the beauty of it is, like I said, it's a public access. Anybody can access it. Anybody can show the videos, share the videos. You can download the videos, as I showed you. And I don't have to worry about being censored or getting a community strike for sharing it because it's public information access. And it's free to the public, or it's free for anybody to share. I tried to let it play in its, not talk over people. I did a little bit to let you see the process, how it worked. And the process, as you guys seen, is a bit screwed up. They're wasting our taxpayers' dollars. They're wasting our time by not focusing on the real issues. Like me personally, I think that those people that lost loved ones should have had a right to speak. I think people should start showing what happens in other countries, how they throw people off the roofs, stone them. Give them the reality checks of what allowing certain things can happen. Because if you start showing that more and more, I think the major news media should start showing it. Yes, it's graphic, but it'll wake people up. It'll show them, oh, wait, no. It'll change people's minds. Sometimes people need that slap in the face of reality before they realize it. I'm going to grab this link and add it into the description here, guys, so you guys know where to go. But I want to do something a little bit different. I mean, I don't normally do things like this because I know most people aren't going to tune in, especially for 3 hours. I mean, these guys will probably go on for another 2 hours. And it's, as I showed you, it's the same. It's pretty much it's all in the same bill. They're just taking parts, and where it should be just one bill, less than 100 pages, common sense, and debate it. Bring your arguments, but bring all the arguments. Don't restrict because they're public people. I found that a bit offensive when they said they couldn't allow those people in. Because, their voice is the ones that really matter. They're the ones that lost loved ones to illegals. Once again, I want to reinstate, because they don't want to say it. They want to use their rhetoric to avoid it. There is a difference. You have legal and you have you have citizen and you have illegal citizen. Non-citizens are protected because they have visas, work permits, school things that allows them to come here to attend school. And some parts of the Constitution do apply. I think pretty much all the Constitution applies to them. It's when they commit a crime by stepping foot on U.S. soil, our sovereign soil, they have committed a crime. They do not have the proper paperwork. They haven't done what all these other American immigrants that used to be immigrants that went through the process to become U.S. citizens, to become the citizens of this country. They disrespect them and the headaches they had to go through, because it is a system that is a headache to go through, which is why we had the problem we have. We could probably cut half our illegals down if we change just the immigration policy. I'm making it a little bit easier for them to come in. You've got to be vetted, though. In this day and age, you have to be vetted. You guys, I think we all can agree on that part. So, I'll give you some things to think about. I gave you an insight on how the system works. How, I'm pretty sure many of you that watched a little, even parts of it, probably not going to like it. You're going to realize that, whoa, they're just wasting, they're not even, yeah, they are, but they're not. I mean, then you've seen the voting process. You got to see how it worked. And mind you, just because they voted on it, it's not going anywhere just yet because they asked for additional 5 days. Things could come up to where they might want to revisit it. As you can see, the one lady, I believe she was from Florida, tried to introduce an amendment to it, which got denied. What's so hard about yay or nay on the bill in front of you? Why are you going to amend it? If there's something wrong with it, argue that case that you see is wrong with it to maybe change some minds to make it. So the votes go nay instead of yay. And that's the other thing. I mean, like I said, political bipartisanship, there is none. There's no, it's one the other right now, which does not support we the people, especially on issues like this that affects our safety, our security. Like I said, things to think about. I know I actually never thought I'd do a video on this because I can't stand watching it because I see the misuse of the system. It's not the system that I was taught. One more thing. Since the one lady wanted to bring up how it affects how one party is more racial than the other. You want to bring that up? And she was a Democrat. Let's talk about the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party opposed civil rights. They opposed. Where the Republican Party was for civil rights. The Democratic Party pushed for segregation, wanted it in place, and fought against anybody that tried to oppose it. The Democratic Party also, to this date, have not done anything to bring better education and jobs to these lower incomes and lower parts of this lower, not lower, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, to these communities, Asian, Hispanic, Black communities. You start getting them better education, bringing better jobs in there, you're not going to have the crime rates that you have. You're going to start putting people to work, getting them education, getting them out and learning trades and skills. That's what needs to happen in these communities. But instead you use it to push a political agenda, which is to strip our Second Amendment rights. Well, as I've shown you in previous video, those statistics, not even close. And what they don't show you, if you actually look, I know the thing about statistics, you can pretty much pull up anything. You don't know what the real statistics are. Sometimes the best way to do it, do like I've done in the past, just go around asking people. Then you get a real definition of an opinion, of their people's opinions, what they see, how they see things. I find that more accurate than so-called polls and statistics. But we live in a society that uses statistics. There's some out there I think would be fairly accurate. I thought the one on the gun one was fairly accurate. It's an archive. Everything that comes in, reported, called in, you know, various things. And they investigate and see if it was or wasn't. If it was, it goes into the thing. So I thought it was kind of accurate. Not sure. Can't say for sure, but it definitely ain't 1/3 of the population, as the governor of Virginia so said. But you know, I think this would be an eye opener. So if you guys enjoyed, and I know it's long, you guys enjoyed and want to see a little bit more of this, I have no problem doing it. I think it's kind of fun doing a little commentary in it. And I'd love to actually have a few people in here to do a little roundtable just from what we watch and get people's opinions and views live. Well, I'll leave this up to you guys. I just wanted to show you the process and use this for education. You know, show you there's ways you can still stay informed. Like I said, all that stuff, come tomorrow, a recording of the whole session. I mean, we can't look into and see what's going on in the closed door sessions, but we can keep track of everything. We can keep track of the bills that pass, legislation that's passed, or legislation that's coming up. Like I showed you, I pointed out that one bill. I was glad to see it back up because they had removed it. So, like I said, it's been 3 hours. I want to get something to eat. Hope you guys enjoyed. And like I said, links there, you can go watch. And, or, like I said, the second link, congress.gov, you'll be able to go to the archives and actually pull up the whole video and watch the whole thing. Commentary in between things. But if you like the video, hit like, hit the thumbs up. If you dislike it, hit the thumbs down. Don't bother me. If you think other people, people that would be interested in seeing this, share it with them. Hit the share. Share it with your friends and family. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I will see you next time. Remember, we the people, for the people.